Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the Mining Podcast. And today's guest is Mike Ferguson, who's the President and CEO of Gensource Potash, who are a Canadian-based fertilizer development company, which is focused on developing resource opportunities with a specific focus on potash development. Mike is a professional engineer with over 25 years experience in potash and uranium, and he's leading the development of this greenfield property, and he's here today to tell us all about the company and the project. So let's welcome Mike to the podcast. How you doing, Mike?
Very well. Nice to see you, Rob.
Yeah, and yourself. So as we always start these podcasts off, I wondered if you can give the audience a little bit of background about yourself, about your career, sort of up until present day.
Happy to do that. I'm, as you mentioned, I'm an engineer, born and raised in Saskatchewan, and spent essentially my entire career in Saskatchewan. When you're an engineer in Saskatchewan, you work in the potash, uranium, oil and gas resource sector for the most part. It's a major economic driver in the province. Interestingly, Saskatchewan produces about a third of the world's uranium and a third of the world's potash. So it's a very significant mining mineral resource region. So that drives the career paths for a lot of technical people, and it did for me. So I started in potash in 1984, working underground in a potash mine, and I say I haven't been able to escape it yet. Move through the ranks. My previous project up to this, prior to Gensource, was called the Legacy project with a small company called Potash One. It was another potash mine that we started in 2007. Sold that to K+S, the big German fertilizer manufacturer, in 2011, and they went on to construct it. It's now called the Bethune mine, and it's the 11th potash mine in Saskatchewan. And we're really proud to see it go from concept to operating mine. But during that experience, the project team that was with Potash One, we started to develop some new ideas about potash, and that was about how to do potash, and that was really the genesis of Gensource.
Okay, I wonder if you can give us an overview of Gensource, obviously the company, and how it's been formed and developed.
Sure. Yes, Gensource is a publicly traded Canadian company. We trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture Exchange, and newly minted just a week or so ago on the AIM market in London. We are dedicated 100% to potash development. We're headquartered in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. That's kind of the home. I like to think of it as the home of potash. And the company was started, as I mentioned, with some different ideas from our previous experience developing the large-scale Legacy project, now called the Bethune mine. And those ideas were around scalability. So the idea was to find a way to scale these things down such that they were easier to finance, added only incrementally to the supply base rather than in large lumpy additions, which has been the case up to now. So that those ideas began within Gensource and resulted in our business plan, which has two pillars to it. So the first pillar is to be small, efficient, and environmentally sustainable. And we always like to joke that those are three words that you can't actually use in the same paragraph with the word potash, because none of those words apply to the current industry. The second pillar is to be vertically integrated. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But the company started with those two pillars to its business plan, and led to our mission and vision, which is to be supportive of food security across the world by creating potash, which is a macronutrient, one of the main fertilizer ingredients that's applied to crops all over the world in an open and transparent manner. And we've lived through those, our mission and vision, and have arrived here today with our first project called the Tugaske project. So it's Gensource is about doing things differently. If just as a data point, the previous project that we developed, the Legacy project, now the Bethune mine, is a conventional solution mine in southern Saskatchewan. It cost, the public records are about $4.5 billion to construct it. It produces 2.8 million tons per year and ramps up to 4 million tons a year over a decade or two. So that was, at the time, that was the most efficient way to enter the industry. So contrast that now to Gensource's first project, which is a modular approach. So we've developed a modular production unit that produces only 250,000 tons, so a tenth the size of the typical big project. And there's really no limit to how many modules you can put in place. It can ramp up to something the same size as the previous projects. But the key was to be able to squeeze it down to something that was easier to finance and easier to fit into the marketplace. And that's what we've done. And the small scale nature and efficient nature of the module supports the idea of vertical integration. So those two are tightly linked together. But that's in general, that's what the company is all about, to start a change in the industry. And we see ourselves as the thin edge of the wedge that will eventually change how potash is developed, that it doesn't need to come in multi-million ton, multi-billion dollar lumpy projects, as has been the case to now.
Obviously, you mentioned that you've just recently listed on the AIM. What was the reason behind that?
We actually had two different drivers to seek a listing on AIM, and we're really excited to be there. It's been a big effort to obtain the listing, and we're proud and excited to be there and look forward to good things to come in the UK market. But the drivers we had first and foremost was our this first project, the Tugaske project. We have an off-taker and equity partner in place, and that is Helm AG. Helm is a large global conglomerate headquartered in Hamburg, Germany. We're working with their fertilizer division in the United States to help market our product into the US market. But in our connections with Helm, being a European company, we started to generate some interest in Europe and the UK. In addition to that, our two major or lead senior lenders are first KfW IPEX Bank out of Germany and Société Générale out of France. So we've ended up with a fairly European flavor to us as we've gone through the financing efforts. So that was one reason, is to create an outlet for that interest generated out of Europe and the UK. The second reason is one of our paths to growth for Gensource is to, as we say, take our technology on the road. There's a number of small, very well-known potash deposits around the world that are located close to specific market areas. Those deposits have been studied a lot over many decades and have always been found to be uneconomic using the old conventional large-scale techniques. We're of the belief that our small-scale modular approach can make those an economically attractive development. So, and of course, when you have production close to your market area and transportation is such a major cost to landing your product in a market area, it gives you a significant advantage. So as we move forward into growth mode post Tugaske, we will look for a much more global international market, and the AIM or the London Stock Exchange provides that global base that we think we'll need in the future to execute these other small scale projects.
Obviously, you've obviously gave us an overview of Gensource. What's the main difference between you and other potash companies, and especially obviously within the Saskatchewan region?
Yeah, so there's fundamentally almost everything is different. The only thing that's similar is that we're producing the same product. We're producing MOP, muriate of potash, which is a KCl based potassium fertilizer. And we're mining the same ore, which is the prairie vaporite formation in southern Saskatchewan. Other than that, it's fairly different on all fronts. As I mentioned, we are coming in with a selective solution mining approach that has a number of really significant benefits to it that strongly differentiate us from the rest of the industry. Number one, those methods allow us to scale this down to a rational size, i.e. a single module of 250,000 tons production is a strong economic unit all by itself. We don't need scale to make our unit costs attractive. Our unit costs start out attractive, and as we scale, they'll get even more attractive as we go. So it allows us to shrink this down to a manageable size. That manageable size, as I mentioned, makes it easier to finance, but it also facilitates our idea of vertical integration, which is creating a direct connection between this operating facility in Saskatchewan and a very clearly identified market, such that all product or all capacity that is constructed is pre-sold. And that's what we've accomplished now with our partnership with Helm. They have agreed to an offtake agreement where they will purchase 100% of the production from Tugaske for an initial period of 10 years on a take or pay basis. So the market risk, as you scale the size down away from many millions to just $250,000, the market risk almost disappears. We know where every single ton is going before that capacity to make that ton is even constructed. So it's a nice de-risked situation to be in. So that differentiates us strongly from the existing industry. The other major factor is with our selective solution mining techniques, we create no salt tailings, and that means we have no brine ponds on surface. The ore zone or the sylvanite ore that is mined by most potash producers around the world is called sylvanite, and it's essentially 2 parts NaCl salt and 1 part potash. So when you produce a ton of potash, you actually produce 2 tons of excess salt tailings. And those salt tailings end up on giant salt piles beside the mine. You can see them all over Google Earth. Wherever you see a potash mine, you'll see a giant salt pile, some of them 4 square miles in size and surrounded by brine ponds and diking systems. So the salt tailings create a situation where the mine is essentially not decommissionable in any rational sense. There's no place to put that salt other than to let it sit on care and maintenance while natural rainfall dissolves the salt over centuries. It's not a very palatable decommissioning plan. The surrounding brine ponds create the single biggest environmental impact of a potash mine, because there's never been a diking system or pond that didn't leak. And in fact, all the brine ponds leak. They're all monitored on a continuous basis to try and track the contamination of the soil and the shallow water formations in the areas too. So we end up with, mostly because of those 2 factors, we end up with an environmental profile that is head and shoulders above anything else in the industry. We simply have no waste, we have no tailings, and that has been proven by our licensing. We've received environmental approval from the Saskatchewan Ministry of Environment without the need to create a full environmental impact assessment. We did most of that work anyways to prove our point. But in the end, the regulators agreed with us that there was nothing about this project that triggered any of the issues that would require a project to undergo a full EIA. So that's a first time ever for a potash operation that it's been licensed in this way. The final item I'd like to highlight that differentiates us pretty significantly is our in the process plant we're using technology. It's essentially a combined heat and power plant with some extras added on. So we self-generate all of our own power and heat. We currently, or in the first instance, we'll do that with the burning of natural gas. But by having this self-contained power and heat unit within our project, we first and foremost eliminate some 24,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year, compared to if we had drawn that same power from the Saskatchewan grid, because unfortunately the Saskatchewan grid is still in the range of 40% powered by coal. The second thing that power system gives us is the rational ability in the future to become carbon free by using renewables and even green hydrogen. We can completely displace our use of natural gas in the future and become an island of self-generating heat and power that is a true net zero operation. So we're not starting that way, but we're starting with some fundamental pieces in place that allow us to move in that direction, and we're pretty excited about that. So those are the main features that make us different from the rest of the industry.
Yeah, that which is obviously quite a few big main differences. So that certainly differentiate you from your competition, certainly. Could you talk to us a bit more about Gensource's Tugaske project and the sustainable production methods used?
Sure. Yeah. So Tugaske is a project that will be co-owned by Gensource and our partner Helm. Helm is not only the off-taker for the project, but they have committed a $50 million check to be part of the equity ownership of the project. So they will be our partner in the project. Tugaske will initially consist of a single module of production, so 250,000. We think the rational number is more like around 270,000 productive capacity, but its nameplate is 250,000 tons per year of final product. It uses selective solution mining approaches, so we access the ore zone, which is in our region is about 1,500 meters below surface. We access that through typical oil well drill rigs and drilling down into the formation and circulating our brine dissolution liquid through the caverns that we create. We create long horizontal caverns through directional drilling techniques. And the process, as I mentioned, is selective dissolution. And that simply means that it does not dissolve the NaCl that's down in the ore zone. It only or selectively dissolves the KCl potash and brings that up. The processing methods are, again, very, very simple. The brine is taken and simply cooled down. It's cooled down very efficiently through a multi-stage cooling crystallization process, which eventually results in a saturated KCl solution that drops crystals out. And as those crystals form, they are pure KCl crystals. They're collected and dried and sized and stored, and that's the final product. The brine that's left from that processing is simply reheated and sent back down into the solution mining caverns again. So it's a continuous cycle of picking up KCl potash in the ore zone down below, bringing it to surface, dropping the KCl out through cooling, reheating, and back down to the caverns again. By using this continuous cycle, we are able to use 75% less fresh water per ton of product than conventional solution mining. So that's another piece of the efficiency puzzle, that it's not just about power or energy use, but in Saskatchewan, fresh water is a valuable commodity. So it's a small, for a potash mine, it's a small scale and simple operation using existing proven and really quite simple techniques.
Gensource has a vertical integrated model. Could you tell us and talk to us a little bit more about this and how it differentiates for the company?
Yeah, that vertical integration, as I mentioned, is one of our business plan pillars. So it's a fundamental piece of why we're here. And the way the potash industry works is it's a very concentrated industry. The top 5 producers in the world account for 75–80% of the market, and it's that concentration extends to the supply chain. So the supply chain to the ultimate end user, which is the farmer, the grower, is the end user of this product. The supply chain down to that level is largely owned and controlled by the potash producers. And that was one of the key pieces that we were out to start to change, because at the end of the day, it leaves the producer, the grower, with very little choice on where they get their potash from, whether they get it or not sometimes, and certainly no choice at all on price, or no competition on price. So this vertical integration idea came as a way to create our own supply chain, to step outside of the existing supply chain and just leave it to work how it works now, but to start to provide an alternative. And through it probably took us a couple of years to find the right partner, but we did find the right partner in Helm and Helm Fertilizers in the US that was interested in this model. They were interested in securing their own supply of potash for their own customer base. They have an existing customer base that demands potash, and this is Helm's way to guarantee their supply. So now, with their ownership in Tugaske and with the offtake agreement, they have guaranteed access to whatever it produces, 270,000 tons a year. As that grows, it's easy to add another module or 2 and make it 500 or 750,000 tons per year. Whatever the market demands, it can be added quickly and efficiently and in small incremental pieces. And that allows Helm to grow their business, because they don't have to rely on third parties in that supply chain who may not want to supply them in any given year. So that's the idea, is to create that new supply chain. And with the supply chain we have now, Helm will purchase the product in the rail car supplied by Helm right at the Tugaske project site, and they will deliver that rail car directly to their customer. Whether that customer is a retailer or a large farmer, it's a direct shot from the producing facility in Saskatchewan to that market customer at the end of the day. So the supply chain is exceedingly simple, straightforward. I'll have to say, because it's the topic of the day, it's a very low carbon footprint, because it gets in the rail car once and it's taken to its destination and it's unloaded, and that's it. There's no offloading, storage, rehandling, moving it around back and forth. So it's a very efficient supply chain that allows Helm to grow its market share. And that's our version of vertical integration. And we think this also, once other companies, or even a large farmer buying group or a co-op would consume this much potash fertilizer in a year, they can start to see that there are alternatives. They can sign on to a model like this and be guaranteed their tonnage every year, like clockwork. And that's our idea. And the first implementation is through the Helm equity partnership and offtake agreement for the Tugaske project.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an ideal marriage. Obviously, how it's all been set up.
It is. It's synergistic, certainly for Gensource and for Helm, and we think for the end user, the grower, the agricultural grower is going to benefit from this model also.
It's forecasted that the overall potash market is expected to grow over the next few years. How does Gensource plan to tap into the growth and I wonder if you can talk to us about how Gensource can support the need for a growing global population to be fed.
Yeah. If you look back even sort of into 1960, the potash market has grown at around 2% per year, pretty steadily over time. And that's expected to continue. When you look into the future, everybody's crystal ball is a little bit different. So depending on who you believe, it'll continue to grow at 1.5 to 2 to 2.5% going forward. And that's driven by kind of the fundamentals that I think everybody talks about, which is growing global population. By the middle of the century, we're going to be at 8 or 9. Some projections are even at 10 billion people on the planet. Our arable land is disappearing through urbanization and climate change issues. So the arable land per person is dropping. And that means agricultural productivity has to increase to produce the amount of food that we need to feed everybody in the world. So those are the overall drivers. And I think anybody who looks at the market is in pretty close agreement that it will continue to grow. The potash market currently stands at around 70 million tons per year globally of all forms of potassium fertilizer. And that will continue to grow incrementally year on year. We fit into that very easily with our small incremental production additions. We don't really create shocks into the system. In the old model, when you started up a new mine that took you 10 years to build, and all of a sudden now you're ramping up to something 2, 3, 4 million tons of production per year. You create a situation where the market can't accept all of that tonnage. So it stretches out your ramp up time. And we've seen that almost everywhere. The ramp up time is extended, not for technical reasons, but for market reasons, that the market doesn't accept that large new tonnage just yet. So it has to be fed in slowly over time. The result of that is capital inefficiency on the construction and operations of these things, because you've constructed 100% of your plant capacity, but you can only use 70 or 80% of that for many years until you ramp up into full production where the market will accept it. So by coming in with a small scale modular approach and the vertical integration ideas always kept front and center, that we will always build a module that will run at 100% from day one. So the capital efficiency is improved. And because the tonnage we add to the market is relatively small at just 250,000 tons on an annual basis, the market, the way we're seeing it, the market will have no problem at all in accepting that new tonnage. And as is the case with Tugaske, that tonnage is always going to be pre-sold. Before we construct a module, we will have an off-taker who has committed to purchasing 100% of that production. Yeah. So we think we fit into the growing market very easily, and we start to turn the industry into more of a manufacturing kind of a model rather than a bulk mining kind of model. That this doesn't, potash we don't think should behave like iron ore or coal or other large bulk tonnage commodities.
So as a conclusion, just wonder what the outlook is for the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, so now that we've completed our AIM listing, and we have just in the last month or 6 weeks, we've announced the commitment from our senior lenders. So we have commitment letters now from KfW and SocGen for a $280 million Canadian debt facility. We have a commitment from Helm, as I mentioned, for a $50 million equity check into the project. So over the next 12 months, the remaining items to complete are, first and foremost, to complete the equity financing. So that's Gensource's job, to complete the remaining equity gap to put the entire project into full implementation mode. At the same time, we're actually starting already to ramp up the engineering team to get some trade-off studies completed and start to move into detailed procurement and engineering. So we're hoping to complete the financing over the next several months which will allow us to start our construction next summer. So that's hopefully what you'll see coming along is news around the financing completion, project ramp up, and initial construction activities next spring and summer. From there, it's a little less than 2 years construction time. So we're looking for first product probably early in 2024. Hopefully we'll be producing product for Helm to sell into the 2024 growing season.
Yeah, Mike, really appreciate your time, and really good luck in this project. And like you explained, it's a new model, and we obviously wish you all the well and success with that. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, how can they go about doing that? Are you across any social media platforms at all?
Absolutely. We exist on Twitter. We have a contact us form on our website, gensourcepotash.ca. You can request to be on our mailing list, and we'll keep you informed by email as news comes out. And you can contact the office directly. Visit our website, and there's contact information directly there. We're a pretty small group. We get back to interested shareholders personally. That's how we roll.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Mike, thanks a lot again. Appreciate you sharing your story, and wish you, like I said, wish you well in the future with this. And to our audience, hope you enjoyed the episode, and obviously one to watch as well. Obviously, potash is a essential commodity, if you call it, for obviously growing the food. So appreciate if you can share and like this episode amongst friends, family, and obviously other people in the industry. I appreciate your continued support. So until next time, happy mining.